Bible is a necessary historical document to teach our kids about the history of this country, to have a complete understanding of Western civilization, to have an understanding of the basis of our legal system, and is frankly, when we're talking about the Bible, one of the most foundational documents used for the Constitution and the birth of our country.
First it was Louisiana, ranked 47th. Now it's Oklahoma, who's ranked 49th in education, who seems to think that by putting up the 10 Commandments, you're going to increase the education of your children in things like reading and math and science. If you cannot see that this is just that right-wing way of forcing religion and control into children, then you must be blind. Children can learn the 10 Commandments all they want, and that is not going to change the educational level of the children in Oklahoma. Putting more teachers in classrooms or less students in a teacher's classroom, increasing the amount of money that goes to schools that are underperforming, focusing on STEMs instead of focusing on electives like the Bible is going to do better. And what are you going to teach these kids out of the Bible? You claim that you're going to have a teacher who can teach. What if your teacher is Muslim? What if your teacher is atheist? What if your teacher is anything other than Christian, and they have not studied this book and have the ability, so therefore they wouldn't have the ability to actually teach this book? And what is the curriculum? Because you Christians can't agree as to what the curriculum is. As a matter of fact, you're claiming that you're going to put the 10 Commandments up. Which 10 Commandments are you going to put up? That is my question, because let me give you a little bit of history and information on this. One, the 10 Commandments were not utilized in order to determine the laws of this land, nor the Constitution or anything thereof. If you actually go and research how the Constitution came to be about, one of the things that you will have to find is that the thing that pushed the Constitution was Hamilton writing the overwhelming majority of the Federalist Papers. And I think Madison wrote like 10, and one other dude wrote a couple. But Hamilton wrote the overwhelming majority, and Hamilton was very much against church and state. As a matter of fact, there was an occasion where Benjamin Franklin wanted to start the meetings of the Congress with a prayer, and Hamilton and many others was like, nah, we good. That's all right. Keep that out. We're not doing that. Because he recognized how valuable the separation of church and state was. Now, if you want to look at who did write and utilize God, then look at the anti-federalist papers, and you will see that it was only used 9 times where there was a reference to God. And these were people who did not want the Constitution to be ratified. So to say that the Constitution is based on your 10 Commandments is a flat-out lie, or he and those around him are simply ignorant of how the Constitution and the formation of this country actually came about. Now, if you also are going to teach the Bible, then are you going to teach them that slavery is okay in the Bible? Are you going to teach them that treating a woman as property is okay in the Bible, that genocide is okay in the Bible? What are you actually teaching them out of your Bible? Because I guarantee that y'all will not be able to agree, Christian for Christian, what should be taught out the Bible to students, and to students whose parents may not want their children to be taught Christianity. Because the documentation that leads to the Bible creating this country is very flawed. And you say the 10 Commandments? Although I can talk about the fact that, and let's look at this one in a little historically. When you look at Exodus 20, this is the 10 Commandments that most people think are the 10 Commandments. But when you read Exodus 20, in no way, shape, or form does this God claim that those are the 10 Commandments. I know you're going to read in the headers of your Bible, or the subheaders in your Bible, that it says 10 Commandments. But in nowhere in the writing does this God claim that those are the 10 Commandments. And of course, those 10 Commandments were thrown on the ground and broken as a broken covenant between the Israelites and this God. They had set up their golden calf, and then he murdered 3,000 people in order to then go back up and say that these people are acting stupid. It is not until you get into Exodus 34 Exodus 34, that you actually have where this God says, these are my commandments, my 10 commandments. So these are the actual 10 commandments that does not reflect the overwhelming majority of what was said in the first so-called 10 commandments. And as a matter of fact, your God lies in Exodus 34. In Exodus 34, he tells Moses, I want you to carve out some tablets, the same, carve out some tablets like you did the other time. Come up to the mountain, and I'm going to give you the exact same 10 commandments that I gave you before. But yet, what Moses come back down from the mountain is distinctively different from the original 10 commandments to which your God claimed that he gave the first time. Don't boil a baby calf in his mother's milk was not part of the first ones. Don't give me a sacrifice of blood that has also yeast was not part of the 10 commandments. The men of your country present themselves to me 3 times a year so that I can make sure I kill all your enemies was not part of the original 10 commandments. All your firstborn sons and all your firstborn animals are to be given to me was not part of your first 10 commandments, because those first weren't the 10 anyway. It was these. Though don't commit adultery wasn't part of it. Don't steal wasn't part of it. Don't kill wasn't part of it. He made sure he said keep the Sabbath and don't have any false idols, but those were parts of it. But the overwhelming majority of your original fake 10 commandments that weren't actually called commandments were not part of your Bible. Now, I want y'all to go. If you're a Christian and you're going to come on here and be like, no, those were the originals. That's just what you've been told. But go read Exodus 20 and then flip on over and read Exodus 34. And you'll see that he said nothing about those being commandments in the first one. They were not called the 10 commandments, but he called the 34 the 10 commandments. And they are distinctively different. And I doubt very seriously if those are the commandments you're going to put in there. It's like 2 times he talk about don't give me sacrifices with yeast in it. This God has a problem with yeast for some reason. So Christians, stop eating your bread with yeast in it. You know, this God and these people who believe in this God are just merely trying to control people. And it's as simple as that. It is all about control, and it is all about deflection. You will have a whole bunch of Oklahoma people, Christians, who will say, yes, we got to put God back in church, school, God back in the school. Next, we'll be able to get prayer back in the school. And y'all think that that's going to make your kids more intelligent, when it just shows how unintelligent you are as a parent who would support this, and your school system, because you're inviting fight. Now, there's one last thing that guy said that wasn't part of this particular video, but he tried to bootstrap in that Martin Luther King in his fight for civil rights, that he utilized the Bible. Well, but Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was a pastor, so of course he quoted the Bible in many of his speeches. But Dr. King, and I'm speaking of a man who grew up in Atlanta and had to study Dr. King long before it became a national holiday or part of your history books, that Dr. King was very adamant about maintaining the separation of church and state, and that his civil rights movement was based on the liberation aspects of your Bible and not your 10 commandments or any other control features of your Bible. This was just a way for the right to think or try to convince black people that this party, that these people are on your side, by trying to grab you at an emotional point of your affinity for Dr. King. Don't be fooled by it. And always remember that you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.